Hi, I'm Tom Morrow with the Sheraton Valley Sportsman, and today we are going to get the 2013 fishing season a flying start. You know, it's almost too late to get started, but you got to start somewhere. We're going to talk a little bit about prep, and I've got a new friend, Sam Sagaser.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
And Sam is going to be working with us and trying to do some fishing shows. And Sam is a pretty devout bass fisherman, fishes tournaments and that type of thing. And today, Sam, you're here to kind of give us some tips on how to get ready for the upcoming fishing season. And we're gonna zero in on some particular lures you want to pay attention to for this early pre-spawn bass fishing time of year. So Sam, what do you think about getting your stuff together? What do you start with as far as?
I'll tell you, Tom, I just got back from Table Rock. We had a FLW BFL tournament down there on Lake Ozark, or Table Rock Lake. I'm getting mixed up.
That's all right.
But it was a pre-spawn bite, and it didn't work out like it should have. The biggest lure that everybody's throwing is the Rage. Started last year. It's the Alabama rig, which I noticed you have one rigged up. I have two of them. I got one of them rigged up, and I got another one in the box. But what it is, normally everybody's fishing points, fishing bluff ends, you know, and trying to get these fish as they're moving up staging. Well, with the Alabama rig, everybody was out there. They were getting into cedar trees, you know, 13, 20 feet deep. And they're just ripping them out, and they're just catching big sacks. Well, I believe the fish are starting to get accustomed to a new lure. You know, it's been hot. Everybody's slung it and just slung it and slung it. And you can't catch fish. Well, I made a mistake. I threw it too. And I should have put it down and went to a jerkbait. A jerkbait, just as this is an RC stick jerkbait made by Lucky Strike. Toss it out there, give it a little twitch. You know, after you pull it down to your certain depth, let it sit there. You count down 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Basically about 5 1,000, you'll sit there and you'll twitch it. You'll pause again, you'll twitch it again. And hopefully one of these twitches, there'll be a bass already ate it, and you just, you know, go ahead and ease the hook into them and everything else. And the other lure that was being used was a wiggle wart, which I have several here. This is the box that I was using. I had swim baits, jigs. I mean, the jig was, you had to use a little bit of everything. But with the wiggle wart, Tom, have you threw wiggle warts? Oh
yeah, that's a classic.
That's a classic Ozark bait right there. You can't ask for better than that. But
sometimes up here in the North Missouri lakes with all the mud and brush, you know, I don't throw crankbaits as much, but boy, down in the rocks and such, these are the things. But your basic classic wiggle wart.
Actually, with that wiggle wart right there, that bone color, I fished with a guy, and he just tore him up on Lone Branch Lake and Thomas Hill with a bone wiggle wart. He just caught him real well. But I'm going to show you a little tip here just real fast, if you don't mind, Tom. A lot of times down in the Ozark stuff, you're fishing bluff end walls. You're trying to get that bait down there and help hold it down. Whenever you pause it, give it a little bit of a suspend. Take you some of these suspend dots. They're just a little bitty lead dot, you know, kind of made by Storm. Kind of put them down there on the end of that bill, like that. And what that does, that crankbait's sitting there just a shaking and a wiggling, and then you kill it, it's kind of going to hold it there, and it's going to keep it down just a little bit more. Just a little tip, you know, somebody might be interested in. You know, try that.
And those are suspend dots are basically made out of lead. It's with like lead tape.
Right.
And you can actually get that lead tape in golfers used to use it to
Yes.
change their clubs, and you can buy a whole strip and cut it out in pieces.
Exactly
but,
right.
yeah, commercially they're called suspend dots.
Right. And the wiggle wart was not on. It was on the few days before, and then it just died out. Brown red crawl worked real well, and the phantom green.
So before this tournament, and was this your first tournament of the year?
That was the first tournament of the year, yes.
So what did you do to get ready for that? And I noticed your tackle system, you use the separate box and the loose bags. And why do you like that type of thing?
Okay. Why I like that is because in the tournaments, I fish as a co-angler, so what I have to do is I have to fish out the back of the boat. So I have to take and condense everything down to a certain point. So I have several of these boxes empty, and I prep them for each day for a tournament or for going fishing. So I know I'm going to be doing a jig, I'm going to be doing jerkbait, a lipless crankbait, which is really one of the top lures for a pre-spawn bite. And then also the wiggle warts, maybe some swim jigs, but I'll do like some grubs, and I'll do some stuff for a drop shot also. So I'll have a drop shot, I'll have a shaky head, the Alabama rig, a jig, a crankbait, which would be the wiggle wart for down there. And what I do is I just take, these are my swim jigs box, and I just keep all my swim jigs in one box, as you all can see there.
And you might, we might show what exactly a swim jig is.
That one's, I was flipping that. I was flipping that one. Okay, here's my favorite color actually. This is a splatterback shad swim jig. It's in a 3/8 ounce.
Now these swim jigs, to me you're saying the swim jig, but to me this is just basically a jig and pig jig.
Well, no, I swim with them.
Okay.
That is an alternative to a spinnerbait.
Oh, okay.
What I'll do is, as you can see this one, Tom, I'll let you have that. I'll put a 4-inch crawl on the back.
Big paddles.
Big paddles, and that'll make a lot of commotion in the water. Chartreuse and white's the ultimate color. And if I want a little bit more kind of attraction, then I'll dip it. And what I'll do is I'll reach into this box, and then I dip it with some JJ's Magic.
Some good stinky stuff.
Some good stinky stuff.
Okay. And you basically are throwing that, working that like a spinnerbait.
But you can also flip it.
But it doesn't have a spinner.
No spinner.
I see.
But you can also,
and that's a technique called swim
jig.
Swim jig.
You can burn it toward the top of the water, where you can just get it up there and you'll kill it, and you can fish it, work it with your rod tip, and you can get a good topwater bite out of that, or you can fish it slow and just jig it off the bottom, or you can flip it into trees and swim it out. Docks, I mean, it works real well. I had some success at Lake Ozarks last year using a swim jig.
And that big of a grub on that makes it fairly buoyant, so it doesn't sink. And your light head, what is that, a quarter ounce?
3/8 ounce.
3/8.
Now this
so
one,
it doesn't sink terribly fast, and then you get a big football head jig.
Yeah, like
a flipping jig that's
flipping
a 3/4 to a 1/2 ounce. That sucker goes down fast and hits the bottom, and it's more of a crawdad imitation.
Right.
Whereas this is more of a bait fish imitation. Right. But, we're talking to general run-of-the-mill fishermen, and that Alabama rig came on last year, and some of us don't even know what the heck it is. Show us an Alabama rig.
Well, what I'm going to show you here is my setup I used at Lake Ozarks. Once I can get it unclicked down here. An Alabama rig is normally a 5-wire or more lure, okay?
And they also call them an umbrella rig.
Umbrella rig, saltwater fishermen.
Yeah, actually, this technique kind of originated in saltwater.
Exactly. Well, what I've done here is I got 4 dummies, across the top. This is a 7-wire. Then I got 3 hooks, 1 on the outside. These are all 1/4 ounce heads. Then 1 here. Well, being that the bass are getting accustomed to the bait itself, the lure itself, I put a different color on, kind of with some chartreuse, kind of a sexy shad. This is like a little dipper. And I put it on down at the bottom because this at the very bottom. I'm trying, maybe it'd stand out to where I get that crush.
Now, why don't you just put hooks on all 7 of those?
Be illegal. I'll be getting one hefty ticket.
That's Missouri law.
That's Missouri law.
Missouri figured out when they introduced this lure, Missouri Conservation figured out that they already had a law that excluded putting a hooked lure on each one of these. So you were only allowed 3 hooks per
rig
or whatever. It's a little stretching it, but to be legal with this, you can only have 3 hooks on it. In other states, they put a hook on each one of these, and of course, you would want a hook on each one.
Oh yeah.
If you could legally,
yes.
but we have to run it in Missouri with only three hot ones. You know, these other ones have no hook, so they're just attractors.
Well, like this one here, you can see what I did different on this one. This is a 5-wire. So I actually made that one more legal.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the smoke grubs on it because the table rock, the clear water, smoke is a real good color to use there. And then I added just 2 spinnerbait blades, which I noticed you did the same thing on yours. I think you have a spinnerbait blade on yours. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just got a curl-tail grub.
Little curl-tail grub.
Little vibratail minnows on that one.
And everything we're talking about here will be what I'll be fishing with the rest of this week and into next week. You know, I'll try to throw an Alabama rig, but one of the key lures that a lot of people aren't using is a swim bait. And I was talking to you about that last night. It'd be an inline swim bait. That is an inline swim bait.
Okay. Cool.
Swim bait, it's like an osprey swim bait. It's going to represent a bait fish, or it's going to represent like a shad, a bluegill.
Well, I don't think I do very good on this thing because it doesn't have any hooks on it.
Let me show you.
What in the heck?
What you do with that?
You just got to let them swallow it far enough.
Let them eat it. Let it eat it down. What you do with that, I'll hand this to you, Tom. But what I do is I take, that's a setup right there that how I'm gonna rig that. I'm gonna run the line through the nose of the swim bait. Then it's gonna come out. Well, your barrel swivel, the gray barrel swivel, I'll tie, after the line comes out, I'll tie onto that. Okay? Then it'll be sitting there kind of resting there on top of it.
Yeah, I see.
Okay? And then
the swivel doesn't, it's going to be back that far.
Right.
Basically.
Right. And then you'll see the 2 stinger hooks that'll kind of sit off to the side. And that'll be how I fish. And it gives it enough weight to take it down. And that's a good spawn bait right there.
And that is weighted.
Yes.
It's molded into the big old minnow here.
Sexy shad minnow.
Okay. And it'll go through the water with its belly down or its belly up?
Belly down, and it'll sit there, and the tail will sit there, the paddle tail will be swimming.
Okay.
And all you do is you just crank it slow. And I'll be using it on the same setup as I do the Alabama rig. I'll be using it on a 7'11" extra heavy rod.
So almost like slow rolling a spinnerbait.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, in our turbid waters of North Missouri, when you're not fishing that clear water like you were down in Table Rock, man, I want that spinnerbait flashing and vibrating and calling the fish across the lake. You know, why would I want to use this thing in this?
A lot of people don't throw that, and it's in a sexy shad color. And a lot of people throw a chartreuse white spinnerbait. They throw a sexy shad spinnerbait. And I'll go to something different than no one else is doing and give it a try. And I'll fish it the pre-spawn to the spawn. That's the best time to use it. And then I'll pick it up again in the fall.
Now, typically, you know, well, way back when, before we, you know, I'm kind of old, so back in the day, you know, pre-spawn was deep and slow, dragging a jigging pig on the bottom.
Right.
You know, and then, you know, I never did very well in that. If it was below 40-degree water temperature or even below 45 to 50, you know, I had a lot of fishless days. That's why, you know, I got older. I didn't just give up.
Right.
Well, then I started with the stick bait or the Rogue that you mentioned earlier, and just twitching that, and hey, I started, you know, my hands are cold, but I am catching fish, so I'm not all that cold, you know. So there's a lot of different techniques in that early season, and boy, you get some of the biggest fish of the year too.
You do. Your biggest females will move up to spawn in the 45 to 50 degree range, you know, and then a lot of people figured that the spawn really hits on at about 60 to 55. I learned the hard way. I missed a lot of big fish, you know, trying to go after that 55 to 60 degree water temperature. You have to go, nowadays when I'm going after a pre-spawn, you know, bass and fishing for the spawn, I'm going to go start at 40 degree water, and that's when I'm going to start fishing. And actually I'm going going Thursday and Friday and Saturday Macon City Lake. The ice should be melted off. Everything we're talking about, I'm going to be doing. One of the key things I'm going to look for, if I know of a spawning area, I'm going to back off and fish the 5 to 8 foot range of the water. I'm going to put my boat in about 10 foot, and I'm going to fish that 5 to 8. And then if I'm not getting bit, then I'm going to move up. But I'm going to, like, shallow crankbaits. I'm going to do a stick worm like you do, but I'm going to do it with a spinner. I don't know if you've ever done that or not, but I'll put like a Colorado blade in the back end of it, and that's on a stick worm.
But it's just basically a plastic worm, but it's very stiffer.
Right.
And it's heavy.
Right.
I throw this with no weight, and I can throw it a mile.
Yes.
You know.
On spinning tackle.
Yeah. On casting or spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just kind of a dead minnow twitch, and most of these worms are minnow colored. I like minnow colored ones, and that just, you rig it Texas rig, and you just, it swims through the water, but I twitch it and then let it die, and it just falls low.
Right.
And then twitch it a couple times like a minnow's breathing its last breath.
Right.
And I'm terrible with it. I fish it all the time.
I'll show you real quick some ways to fish that here for the pre-spawn and even through the season that you can continuously do it. Green pumpkin with a chartreuse dip tail is what I prefer the most. But what you do is this little spinner here is you'll cut like a tip off of your worm. You'll screw that little hitchhiker or whatever teaser in. It's attached to a swivel, attached to a spinnerbait blade. Well, the way that'll be hooked up, it'll be like that. Okay? Well,
off of the tail.
As you're swimming it like you say you do, that spinner's going to spin. So you can swim it, or you can like let it fall into your weeds or whatever, and you can pop it, and that spinnerbait blade will sit there and twitch. It works real well.
Very interesting.
And then wacky worm, do you do that?
I've never had much confidence in wacky worm.
Wacky worm is a wacky worm is a killer technique. I'm gonna tell you right now.
And a wacky worm to explain to our, you basically.
Do you have a hook? I have a hook here handy.
It's just not pretty. It's just not pretty. It doesn't. It has no aerodynamics. You know. You hook it up exactly the way a dumb kid would hook up a plastic worm and hook it right through the belly and throw it out there. Well, as a bass fisherman that started back in the 70s, that just tears me up. I can't do that.
Well, I'm going to tell you a killer technique. This is a circle hook, and any catfisherman that's watching the show today, they're going to go, hey, I use that. You know, well, they use it for catfishing. I'm going to tell you, this is the best wacky worm hook I've ever used, and I use it for bass fishing. But what you do is you just kind of find your middle, and you just hook it in there. Now, if you don't run it all the way through, it'll be weedless, okay? But I just take, usually what I do is I just go through just about like that,
So yeah, I can see why that would be weedless, because it's got this the point of the hook is actually turned in, and so you probably wouldn't hang up with the circle hook very much.
Not as much. Not as much. It works real well. And then, you know, a lot of people we were talking about the swim jig, and you was confused with that. You know, hey, I'm gonna throw a spinnerbait, you know, and I'm gonna crank it. Well, I'm gonna give you an option. You take this. This is a Japanese do this. You probably haven't caught on to this one yet. And what that is you take it on your swim jig, and you'll just hook it. You'll just hook it right in, and you go through that kind of like a hole there, like you would like for a collar for like rattles.
Stinger hook.
For rattles or whatever. And what you do is, there's your spinnerbait blades right there. And you just...
Couple little willow leaves.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is soft rubber, and it's got a little collar. I guess you could put a trailer hook on there. Okay.
And then lipless crankbaits, you throw them. Yeah, that is perfect.
The way we used to call lipless crankbait is a spot, or it is a rattle trap.
Rattle trap, hot spot, rattle trap, Cordell hot spots. Now,
it's just a minnow-shaped lure that sinks like a rock, and you got to be cranking on it.
Red-eyed shads by Strike King. Here's your Cordell hot spot.
That's a lipless crankbait. It's been around a long time and caught a lot of fish.
Your red-eyed shads by
all different colors and several different brands of them, but they basically all do very tight vibration,
real tight vibration.
And you have to roll them pretty fast to keep them from going to the bottom and getting hung up in the tree down there.
Well, what you want to do with lipless crankbaits is, you're sitting there fishing them, is you want to cast them out. And Macon City Lake, for example, we all know has grass, or most people. It has grass in it. Let that rattle trap and your lipless crankbait get down in that grass. And when it gets down in that grass, rip it out. Because when you rip it out of that grass, that's where you're going to get your reaction strikes, your reaction bites. You can get all this stuff at Walmart. You know, I mean, Cordell hot spots are at Walmart,
and Cordell hot spots you can get on the clearance rack a lot of times.
Yes, exactly.
These things are notorious for the clearance rack.
They are, and I tell you, Bill Lewis rattle traps, I buy several of them off of it. This is a Ruku shad by Spro. I don't know if you ever seen that.
No. Essentially the same
setup.
Same type of thing.
That one works well on lily pads. I've had a lot of success through lily pads with that one.
Because it doesn't get hung up quite as much?
It doesn't get hung up.
See, that's something with a lipless crankbait. You know, let's not call a refrigerator a Frigidaire.
Right.
This is a lipless crankbait.
Lipless crankbait.
Typically, I'm afraid to throw it because it's always getting hung up. You know, they do get, you know, you got to keep on it. I don't put that on for my girlfriend, you know, because that sucker's going to be on the bottom and hung up in a tree root like that, and I'm going to be tying her on another reel.
Well,
but keep tension on it and keep it under control, and you will catch fish on it.
And I tell you what, take your girlfriend to Macon City Lake and do this little trick. Use a wake bait, because Macon City Lake, the grass grows pretty thick and tall. Use a wake bait. These are several in here. This is probably one of the best. These two are probably one of the best colors. Sexy chartreuse, sexy shad.
A wake bait. Now that's a term I haven't used, but I know what these are. This is like a baby 1- man's. It's a crankbait that runs very shallow.
Now that one there, Tom, I hate to interrupt you, but that's a bandit.
Okay. I mean, it's like a
baby 1-.
Baby 1-.
Right.
Little square bill. They don't dive any deeper than a foot.
That's like a Series 1S, I believe, at Strike King. You can pick that one up at Walmart, right there. And that'll be killer out there at Macon City right now. Most generally any lakes or ponds.
Really?
Yes.
And
then,
how do you fish that? Now, I haven't had very much success with that type, and we're calling that a wake bait. That's what modern bass fishing's calling it now. Because it runs so shallow that it'll crank it. When you crank it slow, it'll just break the surface and make a little wake.
Exactly.
Is that the way you fish it?
That's not how I fish it.
Okay.
Okay. How I fish it is I'll make that cast and I'll keep my rod tip down. I want to get it right down to where it just barely ticks the grass. And then when it gets into the grass, I'll rip it out. And when I rip it through that grass, a lot of times that's where I get my reaction strike. I'll use, what pound test do you like to use on your crankbaits?
Whatever I have on.
Whatever you have on? I'm probably more technical than you.
Probably.
What I like to do is, like for my crankbaits, I'm going to take and fish like a 5-to-4 gear ratio, a 5-to-1 gear ratio on my crankbaits. And I'm going to fish with 10-pound test fluorocarbon to 8-pound test fluorocarbon. The reason for the fluorocarbon is flat out the line sinks. So that's going to pull this shallow diver down a little bit deeper, okay, instead of letting it wake up. Now, if I want it to wake up, then I'll put on 10-pound monofilament, monoline, or I'll put on braid. I don't like to fish crankbaits on braid, but there is a lot of people that do that. But the mono floats, so it's going to keep it up. Mono has stretch. Now that's going to not work for me because I'm getting down in the grass and I'm ripping. Okay, with the fluorocarbon, I get a steady rip. I mean, I'm ripping that bait right out. Fluorocarbon, you got stretch. It's got the stretch in the line, so I don't prefer that.
Monofilament has stretch.
Yeah, monofilament has a stretch.
The fluorocarbons, they're limited stretch.
No stretch.
No
stretch.
No stretch.
No stretch on fluorocarbon, and it sinks. Braid, no stretch. This is braid line here. I throw my Alabama rig on 65-pound test, and I'll flip with braid sometimes. Only if I'm in like lily pads or weeds. Most time when I flip or fish a Texas rig, I'll do it with fluorocarbon. Because I do it with the line, I want the line weight where it's down in the water. I'll use 15-pound test to flip with, and it just seems to work well for me. You know, everybody's particular about what they do. So
we've given some people some good ideas to get ready and what to run to Bass Pro Shop and buy, or any of your fishing retailer. You know, and I don't, you know, I've got so much stuff that I don't encourage anybody to, you know, get yourself a good collection of stuff that covers a nice variety, but you know, don't break the bank on all the fishing. Don't run out because we told you so. Let's talk a little bit too about rods, getting ready, and a good variety of rods to have in the boat and get started out on in the spring.
This is Denali. This is a jade wood. It's a rig, Alabama rig, and a flipping jig rod. I flip with this. It's 7'11", and it's extra heavy. So when you're flipping, what most people don't understand the concept of flipping. When you flip, you pull your line out to, you know, half the length of your rod or whatever, and it's close combat fishing because you're taking your rod tip and letting your line down to your target, and you
very accurate, close by presentations
with the water not splashing. You know, you just lay it right in the water. Then pitching, which I use also for this, is I'll just take some line out, you know, push my button on the reel, and I'll just pitch it out there. Line a sail, I just thumb my reel, and it sets right down.
A little bit longer distance.
A little bit longer distance. With this one also is you can cast with it. So I'll cast like Texas rig worms, your crawdads, your jigs, your worm, your stick worms. This setup right here will take care of probably 5-6 presentations or better, because you can also do Alabama rig, your swim baits. So one rod right there will take care of everything. You just got to keep cutting line.
So that's a long, heavy rod,
extra heavy,
and put braid on it.
I put braid on it just because I got the Alabama rig. But most of the time, I'll change reels. What I'll do is I'll change reels. And this is a 6 to 4 to 1 a lose. Have you heard about the new craze with lose yet?
No.
Well, feel how light that is. I mean, it's the rod itself is real light, and then the reels are real light also.
Can't hardly tell it's there.
Yeah, and that makes a difference when you're on the water for 8 hours or more. It's real smooth.
Very nice.
So you can take care of about 6 to 10 presentations just with this one rod. And then with this rod, if you didn't want to go out and spend the money on a spinnerbait rod, you could probably throw probably a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait on it. Most people will go to Walmart and they'll pull off the shelf be a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait, the real light ones. So this setup will work for that, even though I wouldn't personally do it. But if somebody wanted to do it, they could. But this is my cranking stick, and it's 7-foot medium. It's got the backbone that you need it, and it's got a good soft tip. For this, you can do your crankbaits, your wake baits, your small wake baits like the 1-minuses. I'll even throw the I'll throw the big 1-minuses and the baby 1-minuses. I'll throw the jerk baits on it, and this take care of about 4 presentations.
And that's and what kind of line, weight, and
what I have on here for jerkbait fishing, I have 10-pound fluorocarbon, which I use the 10-pound fluorocarbon for my crankbaits and for my jerkbaits, and that takes care of that. And this is a 5 to 4 gear ratio, so that's what I'm going to be using for that.
Kind of a middle speed reel.
The 6 to 4, just a little bit more line pulled in.
Very good.
And then this right here is a drop shot, and this is a Denali drop shot rod, and I got it rigged up right now for a drop shot. This is a speed spin reel. This is a 6-pound test. That's the only line I use. I actually have to take and replace this right here, cut this off, because it's actually, I got into like a dock and it kind of frayed it, so it's starting to fray.
And what kind of line is that?
That is 6-pound fluorocarbon.
Okay.
And you'll see it'll start to fray, but I mean, heck, if I went down to my pond and started fishing with it tonight, I wouldn't be worried about it, But if I'm going to the lake after bigger fish, I'm going to cut that off. But what I do with that, Tom, it's a perfect setup. These are Berkeley power baits. You can show that to everybody. But you can get them in several different colors. They're panfish and a trout worm. And what I'll do with that is I'll go drop shotting, and I'm going for like Macon City Lake or my pond or someone else's pond. I'm going to go for crappie and bass at the same time.
Okay, hey,
and that'd be a perfect setup right there. You can get them in different colors. That's a smoke color.
Now that's basically, these are all attached.
Attached,
pinch
so
one off.
Take one off.
And this is a tiny, talk about a trout worm.
Yeah.
Very tiny. Very thin.
What I'll do is I'll use like them smoke worms at Table Rock, Lake the Ozarks, but I'll take that end off right there. But I have these in chartreuse, and a chartreuse color, which is like a yellowish, kind of like some of that chartreuse on that jig right there. And this drop shot hook, and what I'll do is I'll just nose hook it kind of in there, and it'll nose hook on there, and I just cast it out. I got my drop shot weight on there, and for my drop shot weight, I'll take this apart here. It's just real light little weight. And you can see that set up there. I'll make a cast with it, and this will sit on the bottom, and it's a cylinder that goes through the rocks a lot easier than wood. And it'll just sit there, and that little worm will just sit there and dance. Mm-hmm. And these hooks are...
let's not skip over a drop shot. Basically, this is a technique that uses a fairly small, small hook. Usually
that's a size
drop
2.
Shot hook. What's
that's
a size?
A size 2.
That's a size 2. And then a leader down below.
It's about 18 inches.
18 inches and a little weight. And what you do is kind of let that get on the bottom
and just
then
shake
just
it.
Kind of vibrate it.
Yep.
And the worm dances there and does the deal.
And what you do, drop shot, a lot of people think drop shot you just go straight down. Okay, you just straight down from the boat and just sit there. What I do with the drop shot, and a lot of people do with the drop shot, and most people don't know, cast it and let it sink and just shake it and drag it back. And you'd be surprised how well that works with. As it goes, put a French fry on it. Put you a French fry on it, put you a little wacky rigged worm on it. But those hooks right there, Tom.
And this is a little extreme.
Oh yeah, that's finesse.
Shot, typically a drop shot, you might use something like this,
yes.
and even a little smaller. But typically, you're using a drop shot worm, a 4-inch worm.
Right.
Sometimes a little more skinny. This is extreme, and I'm sure you could probably hit crappie and bass with that.
That's the reason I like that setup right there. But also, you can go to the extreme and use bait cast tackle, and go with a 10-inch worm.
Sure.
And once the summer gets here,
same rig.
Same rig. But then what I want to show people is a lot of people don't know how to tie a drop shot. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed you have it's a little different.
It's a little different. What this is, these were new at Bass Pro Shop, so I picked them up. They're a VMC spin shot hook. The VMC spin shot hook just dances. It just spins around in a circle, which makes it real good, for giving a good presentation. That beetle spin right there is probably my most popular color that I like to throw.
Yellow.
Yellow with the black, and sometimes you can do the white with the red spots. But that right there, get at Walmart, you're going to save you some money, and you're going to have fun catching fish.
And that's been catching fish for a lot of years.
Yes, it has.
A lot of years.
Yes, it has. It has for me.
All right. Well, Sam, I'm glad you came by, and we're going to have to get out there and go fishing together.
We're going to have to. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's going to be a riot. I'm looking forward to getting the camera and going out there and showing y'all what I do, and hopefully teach y'all something.
Very good.
And be exciting out there on the water.
All righty. And we just might have a new show called Fish On, right?
I hope so. Fish On. That's what it's going to be. Fish On with Sam Sagaser. You can look me up on Facebook, Sam Sagaser, and I'll answer any questions you have. Look me up on Twitter, Sam Sagaser. And you have any question about fishing, I'd be happy to help you. And call me up sometime or something, and I'll take you fishing down my pond.
Very good.